like to just hear from a couple of you, your overall impressions of the book. You know, what did you notice about it that you thought, this part I really like, or this part I didn't like? What were your overall impressions as you read it?
I think the thing for me that was overriding throughout the whole thing was the freedom that it gave to start small and to begin exploring this, no matter what stage of life you're in, no matter what's going on, no matter if you're overcommitted. There was no guilt that came out. The question that you asked in the book that I think epitomized it was, what things do you want to be free of?
Absolutely.
To ask that question instead of what can we do, what can we not do, but what do you want to be free of? That's different for all of us, and therefore Sabbath will look different for all of us. But if we can start there, it just makes, and again, I think I said this earlier, it just makes you go, oh, okay, everybody wants to be free of something. That's compelling.
And then just playing off of what Pam had mentioned too, as I read through this, Keri, I think what struck me was the way you lead the reader into understanding more fully what Sabbath is by asking great questions. Because they're the things that as the reader, you're anticipating them almost for us. And I love the one, as you talk about living concurrently on page 78, and this one that it flows out of that, where you talk about, and you give us such a great biblical foundation of where it all comes from.
Yes.
And why it was suggested by Jesus, or commanded in the first place. Shabbat means to stop doing your own thing, whether it's corporate work, entrepreneurial work, or housework, and focus on God. And then you say this is, I wrote yes right next to this question. What if you took God up on his offer to enjoy a day with him?
Yes.
And the emphasis on the idea of enjoying God is just, I think it runs countercultural right now anyway, but it is especially piercing to women, because we multitask, we run and live Mach speed, but just that question alone, just what if you took God up on his offer to enjoy a day with him?
Yeah.
So,
and that's, I think, when people ask me about Sabbath, I say, first of all, it's a gift. Sabbath is a gift. And a lot of times people say, how do I do Sabbath? Or I can't get my family to do Sabbath. And I'm like, well, it's really about not doing more than doing. But human nature is to want like some rules and parameters and stuff like that. But it really is simply a gift to receive. And I think that makes it, in a way, people are like, I don't get it.
And a good
How could
gift.
that be?
I
Yeah.
love on page 79, right after where Linda's reading, it says, keeping Sabbath is not only about ceasing, but also about celebrating.
Yes.
And I think in so many traditions growing up, it was a solemn, boring, stiff day.
Yeah.
That wasn't joy-filled, that wasn't about celebrating. It was, it wasn't, I don't think, honoring God. It wasn't honoring who God is.
I think that this book gives you like the okay to rest. I kind of
Absolutely.
think, and you went on 103, I love this, allows for imperfections for one day. This is not about letting things slide. It's about exercising humility and building trust and keeping Sabbath. We trust that God's love is not something to be earned, but a right to be received. And then I love that you say on 202, after your day of Sabbath, you give yourself, and on Monday, my productivity soared. Because I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to pay for it on Monday.
Yes.
And you say, God gave me ideas, words. My writing was ignited. And you almost think, all right, you're going to pay for it, so you don't do it. Yet you're not truly giving yourself to God that day then.
Yeah.
And then, Monday, I'm going to try it this weekend. But just to give yourself that day.
To trust
You're not
Him.
sacrificing
It's a gift.
something.
It's a gift.
You're getting something.
Yeah.
To keep saying it's what you can do rather than what you can't do.
Right.
And I come from a pretty, conservative background, and Sunday was not like that though for us. Sunday was a really joy-filled day, even though it was a lot of work for our family, and it was crazy. You grew up in a pastor's family, you just are at church 24 hours a day. It wasn't like that. We didn't take a view of the Sabbath. We took a really fun view of the Sabbath, and I think people outside looking into our life would say, no, that's not true. You all are so, but that wasn't. It was actually the opposite, more like we celebrated Sabbath very much like the way Keri describes her own Sabbath in the book, where we were together as a family, we were in it together, and we did things that we loved to do together. It wasn't a big restrictive day. Now, taking that to my own family and my own kids, it's a lot harder. I mean, it's one thing when you're in the family when you're a kid, and now that you're the family person that's trying to get everyone's schedule, I think it's just good to like look at what are the relationships that are so important to me. And Keri said in her intro, the relationships in our right there are my kids right now have things they want to do with me, just with me. Things that we just have always done together, and I don't have time to do those in the daily week. So can I look at Sabbath now in a different way now that I've read this book and say, I'm gonna take this as an opportunity to really do something with my children that's gonna have them open up to me, and we're gonna renew that relationship again. Sometimes we just forget that.
That's cool.
You know, sometimes with my background, I go towards legalism in my faith and rules and what you can't do. So when I first started thinking about Sabbath, I thought, okay, I need to set aside a time. And I come from an Italian family that's very close. My mom's blonde-haired, blue-eyed Austrian, very close. So we used to have Sundays were the big Italian dinner all day, and everybody would help make the pasta noodles. And my dad now has us over on Sundays, and I have 3 sisters who live in the area, and there are 9 grandchildren. So my dad does Sundays at his house. And I thought, well, how am I going to get out of doing these Sundays? Missing the point that it was about the relationships that we were doing. And I think, Keri, you actually brought it to my attention, like enjoy your Sunday with your family, and that was my Sabbath. Right.
Someone said to me when my kids were young, I think it was Lynn, her kids are a step ahead of mine, and she was doing baseball games on weekends. And I remember so clearly her saying, it is a worshipful experience for me to watch my boys play baseball, because I can rejoice that my boys have bodies that work.
Wow.
Rejoice that they're doing something that they love. So, organized sports does not preclude you from being able to have a Sabbath with your family.
I was gonna say, when my kids were younger, really, from when I was first married to when my kids were pretty young, we didn't have what I would call Sabbath. I mean, we had Sundays and we went to church, but there was nothing Sabbathy about it. And it was just Sunday. And it wasn't, I think, until I was in your class. And you and Sybil and Lynn and Pam and different people were talking about Sabbath. And obviously it was a word I had heard before, but it seemed like an Old Testament thing that had nothing to do with what I was doing today. And I loved in the book where you're talking about even the meals and the symbolism. And I really enjoyed the way that you integrated and embraced traditions from different faiths. Because we have so much to learn from each other.
Yes.
And I was just thrilled to, because you don't have to necessarily agree with the whole denomination to find worthwhile things. And I loved throughout the book were ideas and traditions and principles from other denominations, different denominations, that I might not come across on my own, that I thought were really helpful and interesting and insightful and
Open it up a little bit.
it might have
Freedom.
Yeah,
A little more
exactly.
freedom and
Exactly. So I've been excited to learn more about Sabbath, and we my kids, if you ask them, we have a Sabbath, and they love the day, and we do try to do things, but I love the practicality, the different, ideas that you gave that were, start this Sunday, I could try some of this, I could incorporate this right away.
Or Saturday.
Exactly, or Saturday, and make it look like an actual Sabbath, and actually have an intentionality about it, instead of just having it be Sunday.